Okay, you guys, it's time for language. We are on day 1 of week 7, and we are turning, well, you have out your Little House on the Big Woods book, and you're going to turn to the next page where it says to write a letter. So go ahead and put chapter 8 up there, okay? And on the very next page, also put chapter 8 because we'll be doing both of those pages, okay? So chapter 8, if you remember, was Dance at Grandpa's. It's page 103 in my book. Not sure what page it is in your book, but go ahead and look it up and get there. Okay, so for the first part, which would be the letter, let's take a look at the proper form. It says, write a letter to the school librarian telling her about the book and whether or not she should recommend it to other students to read. So the first lines, like that, right, say, dear. Now, to tell you the truth, I don't know your librarian's last name, and if you call her by that, I know her as Bianca, her first name. So if you know her last name, go ahead and do that. Say, dear Ms., and then her last name, or if you call her by, which you probably don't, but that's all I know, dear Ms. Bianca. So if you know her last name, go ahead. Okay, and then you put a comma after the last name, or if you're copying what I have. Then remember, we don't write on that line. You go down to the next line, okay? And if you really do it correctly, you indent. That's a big deal, okay? You indent your paragraph, so you start right here. You don't start against the edge, all right? Now, it's up to you whether you recommend, if you're enjoying this book, but we can all start with this because this, so she knows what book we're reading. You can say, why am I starting here? I'm indenting. So you go in about 2 finger spaces. I'm just making it big. We are reading and then you do quotation marks and a capital L with quotation marks. Okay, that's what you do with the book. Capital H, Little House, lowercase n, lowercase the, those are minor words. Little House in the capital B for big, and capital W for woods. And then the period goes outside the quotation mark this time because the quotation marks are for the title, okay? We are reading Little House in the Big Woods. You'll notice we indented, right? We started in a little bit, okay? Now, the rest of it will be up to you. I am enjoying this book, period. My favorite part was when, or I would not recommend this book for kindergarten or first grade, maybe something like that. It is for older children, or whatever you want to say. You can talk about whether you would recommend it to carry in the library or to read it to other classes. So that basically is your book recommendation, okay? So go ahead and pause it, make sure you've copied that down. All right, and then you will work on that page yourself. Now the thing is, if you send this to me completed, I will forward it over to Miss Bianca. So if I get 3 of them, she'll get 3. If I get 25 of them, she'll get 25 of them, which will be great. So send that to me, and then I will send it to her, okay, as a recommendation. All righty. So make sure you have that. I'm going to erase it if you need to pause. All right. Now, go to the next page where we are going to be making a story map, okay? Just kind of mapping out the chapter actually. Now, this isn't the greatest chapter to do for this page, but this is the chapter that came up. So we're gonna do it. I think it'll be okay. So, the setting. The first part says setting, right? Where does the story, this chapter, take place? Well, most of this chapter takes place where? At Grandpa and Grandma's house. So we say Grandpa. I always spell Grandpa. I want to say Grandpa house. And we know Grandma lives there too. But we'll just say Grandpa's house. That's the title of it, right? Pretty much, Dance at Grandpa's. And then you've got characters. And how many lines they give you? 1, 2, 3, 4. How about, there's a lot of characters, a lot more than 4. How about instead of saying Laura, Carrie, Mary, Pop, that'll take everything. How about if we say Ingalls family, and that would include all of them, okay? Ingalls family. Then obviously we have Grandpa and Grandma. All right, they kind of come together as a pair. And then was there anyone else that was going to come? I thought they had a bunch of people. There was, who was the crazy guy? That was kind of crazy after the war. Uncle George, right? Uncle George had been in the war and maybe he fell and hit his head. I don't know, but he wasn't quite the same. And then there was the aunts, Aunt Dosha and Aunt Ruby. So we can say Uncle George and the aunts. So I believe that was it. It was the Ingalls family, Pa, Ma, Laura, Mary, Carrie, Grandpa and Grandma, Uncle George, and the aunts. Okay, then over here it says problem. Now, problem always makes you think of something is going wrong. And sometimes there is something going wrong in a chapter, or there's a something that they have to overcome. But here, there doesn't really seem to be a problem that is that bad, right? It sounds like they had a great time. They traveled through the woods. They got to look at the different animal tracks. They got to sleep at Grandma's house. They got to cook and make syrup and get ready for a big dance and all of that sort of thing. So we're going to say mostly, instead of being a problem, being the event. Okay, so right in parentheses, I'm going to write event, because it's more of an event or of a happening than it is a problem. And the event would be the family, and that includes aunts and uncle. The family is getting together to celebrate probably the harvest of the syrup and all that, to celebrate and dance. They're just getting together, having a great time as a family, like a little family reunion maybe. The family is getting together to celebrate and dance. So that would be the problem that we're really calling an event. So I'm going to erase this to make space, but if you need to pause so you can copy, this would be a good time to pause. Okay, event 1, event 2, event 3, event 4. So there's the word event. So what would be perhaps the first thing that would happen? Now you could either copy me or you can come up with your own, okay? But I'm just going to say number 1. Okay, what was the first thing that happened? Well, look in the first page. Ma was going to help Grandma and the aunts make good things to eat for all the people who were coming to the dance. So there were more people coming to the dance. They came from far and near. Okay, so the first thing that happened, though, I would say is they packed up and got ready to travel to Grandpa's. So we can say they packed and prepared to travel. Pack the wagons. Remember, there are no cars. To Grandpa's. So they packed, they prepared, they got ready to travel. Event number 2, well, it says it didn't seem long until they appeared in the clearing at Grandpa's house. So what happened then? They just hang out and watch TV? No, I would say maybe number 2 is Pa went to help the men. I think it would be gather the sap. Oh, we're already to work in the maple woods. Paul went to help the men with the maple trees, gathering the sap, and Ma started helping in the kitchen, right? Back in those days, the men tend to do all the outside work and the women tended to do what was in the kitchen. Started helping in the kitchen. Okay, that kind of brings us up to page 105. Okay, and what were Laura and Mary doing? They were just playing, weren't they? They were just hanging out. The house started to smell good. The syrup was boiling over the fire. They got all dressed up. That would probably be the next big deal. Event number 3. Everyone washed and put on their finest, nicest, the best they had, finest clothes for the party. That's probably what happened, would be a good thing to say. Everybody got their fancy dresses on, their hair combed, and Uncle George was blowing his bugle and all that sort of stuff. And what happened then? The dance began. And every one had fun. Okay, the dance began, everyone had fun. Now, if you need to pause, because I am going to erase again, okay? So if you need to pause, get that copied down. Okay. And the next section says solution. Well, usually when there's a problem, people are trying to work it out, and then how did they solve it? Well, in this case, like we said, there really wasn't a problem. There was an events. The solution, I would call that the conclusion. Conclusion. How did it end? Well, I kind of said everyone had fun in event number 4. That could go into the conclusion. But at the very end of that chapter, see, I've gone past it. We could probably say, mercy me. Let me find it. I'm getting there. Okay, so the conclusion, maybe on page 122. They all said goodbye and headed for home. How's that sound? They all said their goodbyes and headed for home through, just to make it a little bit more poetic, through the snow. Okay, solution, conclusion. They all said their goodbyes and headed for home through the snow. Why don't you do that? Okay, capitalizing. Don't forget your period. And pause this if you need to pause to catch up. And that will be the end of language today. Don't forget the letter. Send it to me so I can send it to Miss Bianca, because I know she would love it. Okay, she would love that. Alrighty, so I will see you in a little while when you get this finished for history. We're going to go into lesson 3 on page 202 and have out your practice book pages, okay? Okay, I'll see you in a bit.